Hey guys, so today we are looking at a video called Salamis, 480 BC, the Battle for Greece, and this is a part of the, Persian attempted takeover of Greece, and this ended up becoming I believe, a decisive victory for the Greeks and a very, big part of that era, alongside with Thermopylae and Marathon, that whole era of Greece versus Persia. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing it. When we covered it in when we were covering the Battle of Thermopylae by History March yesterday, it came across that this was going to be like kind of like a sea battle, maybe, I think. Again, I've never really looked too deep into it, but I'm really looking forward to finally fixing that and finally seeing what this is all about, right? So, yes. Before I get started, if you want to watch the original video by the great I am so sorry. Epic History. This is from Epic History. I apologize. If you want to watch the original video by Epic History, the link is down in the description down below. And, if you enjoy my content and want to support me in any way, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. It would help a lot, and I'd appreciate it. Thank you. With that said, and now without any further ado, let's get to it, shall we? Let's watch Salamis 480 BC, the Battle for Greece, by Epic History, formerly TV, but now just Epic History.
In the 5th century BC, the great king of Persia ruled the greatest empire the world had ever seen. It stretched from modern Pakistan to Macedonia and contained 1/5 of the world's population. The Persian Empire was sophisticated, rich and all-conquering, and in 480 BC, King Xerxes led its mighty forces against Greece, a patchwork of tiny city-states that lay on the western fringes of his vast realm. He had decided to punish the Greeks for having dared to meddle in his affairs. But seeking vengeance, conquest and glory, he would find only disaster and death in the Straits of Salamis. The Historiae of Herodotus of Halicarnassus is presented here so that the great and marvellous deeds of Greeks and barbarians should not go unsung. The events that follow are known chiefly from the writings of Herodotus of Halicarnassus, an ancient Greek colony on what's now the west coast of Turkey. About 30 years after the Persian invasion, Herodotus began his Historiae, his inquiries into its origins and course. Like most people in the ancient world, he believed in omens, oracles and divine intervention. But he also believed that humans could shape their own fate. So he travelled across Greece and the Persian Empire, reading records and inscriptions, speaking to local people, and weighing up the evidence according to his own reason. The Roman writer Cicero would later dub Herodotus the father of history.
That's quite high praise.
War is the father and king of all. Some he has made gods, and some men, some slaves, and some free. The root of the conflict between Greece and Persia went back a generation. In the 6th century BC, King Cyrus the Great brought the Greek colonies of western Anatolia under Persian rule. But in 499 they rebelled and appealed to their fellow Greeks for aid. Only Athens and Eretria answered the call. Together, the Greeks burned the provincial capital Sardis and its temple to the earth goddess Cybele. It seemed like a major victory, but the Persians responded with impressive speed, and the Greeks were soon in full retreat, back to the coast. It took the Persians 4 years to finally stamp out the revolt in western Anatolia. Then the great king Darius turned his attention to the Greeks across the sea, who dared to aid the rebels. He sent ambassadors to the many city-states of Greece, demanding earth and water as tokens of submission. Many submitted, but 2 did not. Athens, a young democracy fiercely protective of its liberty, and Sparta, a conservative, militarized state that took orders from no one.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I never knew that it was that specific instance that caused the hostilities between Greece and Persia to begin. I'm kind of like aware of the main, meat of it, like with the Battle of Marathon and Thermopylae, already when Persia was trying to get at Greece. And, so it's cool to know that this all started with a call to aid from, the Greek colonies of Western Anatolia, and that it resulted into this. And I feel like Sparta and Athens, I feel like when you think a lot about Greek history, these two are usually among the top dogs of the Greek world. That and Thebes, though that was a little bit later on. But like Thebes, Athens, Sparta, that's usually like what I think of like the big three, And I feel like a lot of that definitely was helped in this conflict, because again, the Battle of Marathon, what Athens accomplished against, Persia and also Sparta, and the legendary Thermopylae, where, the 300 battle. I really do feel like, this really was that kind of point. I mean, granted, they were obviously, there's more to it than that, but I feel like this like war and conflict definitely aided in, propping them up even higher, among the Greek world and history. And then, the Peloponnesian War, which is, basically where these two became the superpowers of the Greek world and just started fighting each other. But, yeah, overall, like, it's really interesting to see, the origins of this conflict and kind of a great rise to prominence among Athens and Sparta.
Both cities answered the great king by kicking his envoys down a well, where they were told they might find all the earth and water.
This is Sparta! Kicks. 300, I still love that movie. It's actually one... I never get bored watching 300. And I know it's not like, there's a lot of wild things in there, like with especially among the Persians, right? Like the Immortals are all black-eyed demons, and the Persians are depicted with having like goat people and men with crab hands in their rings. There's a lot of wildness, but I love that movie. It's one of those movies I feel like I can watch forever and not get bored with it.
They required. In 490 BC, Darius dispatched a mighty expedition to bring the Greeks to heel. Naxos was the largest of several islands to
That's really cool. So, for those of you who are new or don't know, I'm a huge fan of Greek history and culture. I would say that the Greeks and Greece as a whole is my favorite group of people at culture and history to learn from. And I actually went to Greece last May, and we had several stops. We went to the island of, well, first we stopped at Athens, and then we went to Paros, and then Samos and Naxos. So went and saw a lot of it. And again, it was one of my favorite moments of all time, because it was the first time I had left the American continent to, really see the world. And something about being in Athens, I loved it. Like, seeing the Parthenon and Acropolis was one of those moments that really humbled me, because it's like I was witnessing something that's been around for thousands of years, way before I existed, and something that no doubt will continue to exist once I'm long gone. And it was just something so cool walking like the path that like famous and great people, kings and scholars and stuff, you know, um, walked. There's just something about those moments that really made me like appreciate history and the love for Greece, because it's often been said that like Greece is like the among like the bedrock a bedrock of Western civilization and whatnot, and a lot of ideas from Greece can still be felt westward, definitely. And I don't know, I'm glad to have went and seeing like some of these areas. I'm like, hey, I was there, and it's kind of like those. It kind of gives me this giddy moment, like, hey, I was there, and all these great things happened here. I don't know. There's just something about it. Like if I were definitely, if I could go back to Greece and like visit more parts of it, I definitely would. In a heartbeat, you know. Um, because I loved it. It was probably one of the highlights of my life. So I'm sorry, I just saw Naxos and I was like, hey, I was there. I really loved it.
Eritrea was sacked and burned. Then the Persians landed at Marathon to mete out the same punishment to Athens. Athenian troops, with those of their small neighbour Plataea, met them on the beach. Though outnumbered 2-1, the Greek soldiers attacked. Their hoplite infantry fought with large, heavy shields and spears in a tight phalanx formation. The more lightly equipped Persians could not stand up to their onslaught. Persian troops were slaughtered on the beach. The survivors scrambled back to their ships. Athens had been saved. 4 years later, Darius died and was succeeded by his son Xerxes. He now took up the task of punishing the Greeks and avenging his father's humiliation. The new King of Kings summoned troops and ships from across his empire and ordered a bridge of boats to be built across the Hellespont. In spring 480 BC, his gigantic invasion force crossed from Asia into Europe. Herodotus estimated its size at 2.3 million men, an impossible number that could not have been fed or watered. Modern historians think 200,000 more likely, still vast for the age.
Certainly.
It was accompanied by an enormous fleet, 1,000 warships or more, supplied by Persia's vassal states across the eastern Mediterranean. Greece appeared an easy target. Its many independent city-states were notorious for constant infighting. But in the face of the Persian threat, 31 states put aside their differences and convened a council of war at the Isthmus of Corinth to plan the defense of Greece. These states were later commemorated on a giant serpent column at Delphi, the Greeks' most sacred site. At the top of the list, the Lacedaemonians, another name for the Spartans, followed by the
You've earned this.
Athenians and Corinthians.
Yeah, that's just really cool. And again, like, I've said this before, Greece is famous for most of its history being divided. Like, they were independent, and, the city-states, obviously, and the various kingdoms within Greece. That despite being under the banner of Greece, there wasn't like that national unity. There definitely was like, oh, we are Athenians and we are Spartans and we are, different. And oftentimes the Greeks would rather fight each other, than actually work together. And again, with that divide and conquer, you definitely see Persia showing up, and Persia was the most powerful and largest empire of its time. So, like I said, on paper, it seemed like this should have been something that the Persians could have done. And, like, I felt like the Greeks were the underdog in this situation, you feel me? So it's really cool to just see that, and like even shocking to see Persia's failure and how how in a little bit eventually the Greeks conquer all of Persia, like like under Alexander and Macedonia, and it's almost like the funniest Uno reverse card in history, right? I don't know, there's just something like unique about that, I think. So yeah.
Knowing the Persians would invade from the north, the Greeks sent 10,000 men to hold a mountain pass at Tempe, near Mount Olympus. But when the troops arrived, they found the position could be easily outflanked. Nor were they confident about the loyalty of Thessaly to their rear. So the troops withdrew. Instead, the Greeks would make their stand at Thermopylae, with 7,000 men led by the Spartan king Leonidas. The Greek fleet arrived at Artemisium to guard the sea flank. Like the alliance itself, the Greek fleet was an uneasy coalition, with ships from city-states like Athens and Aegina that had until recently been at war. The Athenian contingent was by far the largest. It only existed thanks to the discovery 3 years earlier of rich silver mines at Laurium. It had taken the foresight of Themistocles, an Athenian statesman and general, to persuade the people of Athens not to spend this windfall on cash handouts for themselves. Instead, he'd urged them to spend the money on a fleet of 200 triremes for their own future security. It was a decision that may ultimately have saved Greece. Athens, however, was so distrusted by other Greeks that they refused to serve under an Athenian admiral. So Themistocles tactfully accepted the appointment of a Spartan, Eurybiades, to lead the fleet, even though Spartans had no expertise in naval warfare. Spray flying from the oars, the fleets sweep together, ploughing through the swell, ram teeth bared. Both the Greek and Persian fleets relied on a single type of warship, one that dominated naval warfare in the Mediterranean.
Yes, the famous trireme. I feel like when you think, like, that's kind of like a really iconic ship type and design, because yeah, when I think of like the Greeks and even the Romans, I think of the trireme, right? Definitely like probably one of my favorite ship designs. I'd put it number 2. The first ship design that's my favorite, definitely Admiral Yi's the turtle ship that he used in the Korean battles against Japan. I feel like that's my favorite kind of ship design because it just looks cool. But I would put trireme number 2 because we've seen this ship a lot in Greek and even to Roman history, like this design. So I don't know. I feel like it's just a really cool like look to it. You know what I mean?
The trireme. Sleek, agile and delicate, the trireme carried masts and sails for cruising. But in combat, these were lowered, and the ship relied on 3 banks of rowers, which gave the trireme its name. The ship carried 170 oarsmen in total, who could produce a top speed of around 10 knots, to smash their primary weapon, a bronze-sheathed ram, into the hull of an enemy ship, leaving it crippled.
That's so cool.
Boarding the enemy was another tactic. A Greek ship usually carried 14 marines, 10 hoplites armed with spear and shield, and 4 archers. The ship's commander, the triarch, sat at the stern, alongside the helmsman, the kybernetes, who guided the ship's course with twin rudders. A boatswain and bow officer relayed orders to the oarsmen, while a piper helped them keep time. A carpenter and 10 sailors brought the ship's total complement to 200 men.
Wow.
Every ship had a name. And a painted eye on the bow to avert ill fortune. Herodotus describes the Greek ships as more heavily built than the Persian ships, although in what way, we're not sure. He also tells us that Persian ships carried many more marines, 44 in total. Here, the sons of Athens set in place the bright foundation stone of freedom. While Leonidas and the Greeks held the pass at Thermopylae, the Persian fleet sailed south along the rugged coastline of Magnesia. But one night while at anchor, they were hit by a violent storm. Hundreds of ships were wrecked and damaged. Thousands of sailors drowned. According to Herodotus, the Persians further weakened their force by sending 200 triremes around the island of Euboea to cut off the Greek retreat. But the entire squadron was destroyed by another storm.
Yeah, I remember like often whenever I learned about this subject, a big point of like I guess of attention was the Persian ships getting hit by storms and that playing a part in kind of weakening their overall fleet, which you gotta think like, you know, definitely Zeus or Poseidon were not happy with them, right? I guess, you know, obviously back then, yeah, believing that, you would think, yeah, like the gods are on your side. Definitely witnessing that, for sure.
Herodotus offers little supporting evidence for this operation, which would have been extremely reckless, and some historians doubt it ever happened.
Oh, wow.
Despite Persian losses, the Greeks still faced odds of nearly 3-1 at Artemisium. And they weren't just outnumbered. The Persian fleet was more experienced in naval warfare, particularly the elite squadron from Phoenicia in modern Lebanon. Nevertheless, over 3 days of tense naval combat, the Greek fleet held its nerve and kept the Persians at bay. But at the end of the third day, disastrous news arrived.
These were two.
Leonidas and the Greeks at Thermopylae. The Spartan king and half his men had been killed. The pass had fallen. It seemed the efforts of the Greek fleet had been in vain. Central Greece and Athens itself now lay open to the Persian onslaught. As the Greek fleet withdrew, the Persians marched south, burning cities, farms and sanctuaries, though sparing Thebes, one of several Greek city-states to side with Persia.
Wow.
To Athenian dismay, the Greek army, dominated by troops from the Peloponnese, gathered at the Isthmus of Corinth and began building a great wall to protect their own homes from the invader. Athens was to be abandoned. The Greek fleet began to evacuate civilians to Troezen, Aegina, and Salamis. Pallas Athena cannot appease Olympian Zeus, but the wooden wall alone, the wooden wall shall stand. In the months before the Persian invasion, the Athenians had sent a delegation to the Greeks' holiest shrine, the Oracle of Delphi, seeking guidance for the upcoming war. They'd received only a terrifying warning. "Why are you sitting there, you fools? Flee, flee to the ends of the earth." But a second oracle offered the Athenians a sliver of hope. Athens could trust in its wooden wall. A few Athenians thought the oracle referred to a thorn hedge that had once enclosed the city's Acropolis, its citadel.
Yeah, I remember last year for a class of mine that I had in a mythology course for university, I chose to do we were reading dang it. Yeah, we were reading Ovid's The Metamorphoses. And I had to give a presentation, and I chose to do it on the Oracle of Delphi, which was a really unique position. Is that, when we think of like more of the ancient world, women, at least compared to nowadays especially, definitely had more limited roles. And the Oracle of Delphi was unique, and that position was always held by a woman. And even having roots in mythology as the Oracle of Apollo, and it even transcended mythology into being an actual position that, kings and great people literally went to this, whoever was the Oracle at the time, asking for prophecy, and, kind of got whatever the Oracle had to give, I don't know, it was a really unique position, and I remember I had to give my presentation on that, and it was overall a really interesting thing. So yeah, I am aware of the Oracle of Delphi, and it's just kind of, I just find it really cool, that it was something that transcended mythology into a real life position, and that a lot of people took it seriously and went, though obviously I think many of us here don't really believe in the Greek gods, so probably some talking out their butts was needed. Also had heard that probably were high sometimes with the gases emitted at the time, so I don't know, that's just funny, like someone just kind of like just talking out their butt to give you a very vague prophecy, and then you're taking it super seriously, or like someone high giving you a prophecy, taking it seriously. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't personally believe in the Greek gods, so obviously I don't. But it is funny, I still think. It's a cool thing. I'm sorry, I'm kind of getting sidetracked here.
So they fortified themselves there. But when the Persians arrived, they were surrounded and slaughtered. Xerxes then burned Athens and its temples to avenge the destruction of Sardis 18 years before. Themistocles argued that Athens' wooden wall was her new fleet. But as Greek naval commanders met at Salamis in mid-September, the situation looked grim. A king of Sparta was dead, Athens was burning, the Greek alliance was on the brink of collapse. Themistocles was desperate to stop the Peloponnesian ships retreating to the isthmus. He warned them that the enemy's greater numbers and faster ships meant the Greeks would be defeated if they fought on the open sea. But in the narrow straits of Salamis, with less room to maneuver, the Persians wouldn't be able to exploit their great...
That is smart. It kind of is like the same idea as the Battle of Thermopylae, right? The Persians had overwhelming manpower, but they couldn't fully utilize all of them in the narrow straits. So Themistocles, I'm sorry, I'm really bad with names. If you're new to this channel, I'm very bad at pronunciation with names. You're gonna hate me, but point is, that's a smart kind of like idea, basically that, but for a naval aspect. Find a way to negate the Persians' numerical advantage and take them out. That's just smart. I like that idea.
Greater numbers, and the heavier Greek ships had the advantage. Themistocles even warned the other Greeks that if they retreated now, the Athenian ships would quit the alliance and sail to Italy. So the fleet commander Eurybiades accepted Themistocles' plan. But Themistocles worried that the Peloponnesians would change their minds. Secretly, he ordered a trusted servant to go to the Persian camp, to tell Xerxes that the Greeks were in a state of terror and would flee at first light. Just 8 miles away at Phaleron, the great king sought the counsel of his generals and admirals. All advised him to attack the Greeks immediately to win the final victory that would end the war. All except Queen Artemisia of Halicarnassus, commanding 5 ships from Caria. Why risk battle, she argued, when the great king had only to threaten southern Greece by land or sea, and the Peloponnesians would rush home to defend their land, and the Greek alliance would split.
Dang.
Then victory was certain.
Oh, wow.
But Xerxes sought the glory of battle, and was confident.
Dang. That is... I've never heard of that before. That is really cool. Wow, she's the only one who spoke sense in the idea that, yeah, divide and conquer, right? Get the elite, get the Peloponnese to like kind of break off and to defend their home, and then kind of divide and like, you know. Wow, and Xerxes wanted the glory of battle, so dang, dude. What a bad call, I guess, in the long run.
Of an easy victory. Then Themistocles' messenger arrived, telling the king exactly what he wanted to hear. The Greeks were terrified and preparing to flee. He must strike immediately.
Dang, dude. Xerxes got kind of like... He definitely let that desire for a quick, decisive, glorious victory definitely overwhelm him, you know? And this ploy was rightly timed, right? Sending this messenger. Dang, man. That's just really cool to see. And I guess hubris, which is funny because hubris is a big theme, especially in like Greek mythology, of the downfall of great people, and it seems like Xerxes's hubris got the better of him right there, right? Or at least the desire, you know, to win this great glory in this one decisive encounter. So that's really kind of beautiful when you think about it, you know?
Xerxes ordered the Persian fleet to sea that night, so they would be in position to annihilate the Greeks as they tried to escape at dawn. Meanwhile, at the Greek camp, an Athenian named Aristides arrived with sacred relics from Aegina to inspire the fleet. He also brought news that the enemy had put to sea and blocked the straits. Themistocles' ruse had worked. Retreat was no longer an option. The Greeks would have to fight at Salamis. O divine Salamis, you will be the death of mothers' sons. The earliest surviving accounts of the battle that followed, by Herodotus and the Athenian playwright Aeschylus, are sometimes vague and allow different interpretations, but they are detailed enough to allow us to reconstruct the most likely course of events. The Persian fleet put to sea at night, around 600 triremes, outnumbering the Greeks 3-2. Expecting hard fighting at the entrance to the strait, they landed 400 soldiers on the tiny island of Sitalia. Their role was to finish off any shipwrecked Greeks who made it to shore. Then, keeping close to the mainland, the Persian fleet silently advanced into the narrow strait, the elite Phoenicians leading the way. According to a later Greek historian, Diodorus Siculus, the Persians also sent an Egyptian squadron around Salamis to cut off any Greek escape into the Gulf of Megara. But this event is not mentioned in earlier sources, and may be an invention. At dawn, Xerxes arrived at an observation post overlooking the strait. The great king was confident that his presence would inspire his captains to fight with more determination than they'd shown at Artemisium a few weeks before.
What is up, everyone?
Accompanied by scribes, ready to note down the names of captains who fought well, and those who did not. The Persian fleet lined the northern side of the strait, ready to hunt down Greek ships as they fled. What they saw instead was 368 Greek triremes emerging from the bays of Salamis, ready to fight. They formed a line of battle, with the best squadrons on each flank. On the left, the Athenians. On the right, the Aeginetans. As they rode, they sang paeans, Greek hymns of battle. At first they held formation, perhaps waiting for the morning breeze to blow at their back, or for more Persians to crowd into the strait. Then a Greek ship saw an opening and attacked. Soon both fleets were fully engaged. The battle became a chaotic mass of ships, wheeling, weaving, looking for a chance to ram an enemy and avoid the same fate themselves. In the narrow strait, the Persian squadrons became increasingly disordered.
Yeah, I like it when epic history definitely shows like the 3D aspects are just. Yeah, I like when he shows the 3D aspect in his naval videos, because they are so, he has really great animations for them, and I really love watching them. And again, just seeing the trireme in action, everyone's just trying to ram each other, you know, like it's a, what are those things called, like go-karts or something? My apologies, but yeah, just everyone just trying to hit each other and ram each other, and just like, I'm like visualizing also in my head just the crashing as people even ram straight at each other, and just, I don't know, there's something so cool about the image, you know. I really do wish sometimes that, like, I could travel through time and just kind of like witness some of this stuff, because it just seems like, just imagine like being a fly on the wall or the hue or whatever, and just kind of like witnessing all this. Just, I don't know, it's just like an epic battle, you know what I mean? Like, I kind of do wish I could see some epic battles and how they went, you know. I definitely would do that if I could like travel in time and stuff. But yeah.
Any ship trying to fall back ran into other ships trying to press forward, their captains eager to impress the great king. What's more, the Persian oarsmen had been rowing all night and soon began to tire. The Greeks were fresh and fighting for their freedom. The Phoenicians...
Yeah, obviously that morale boost, right, of like fighting for their freedom, a big one. And dang, man, just like, again, the numbers can't be fully utilized by the Persians, you know.
Phoenician squadron suffered heavy losses at the hands of the heavy Greek triremes. Some Phoenician captains, who'd abandoned their ships and made it to shore, were brought before Xerxes. They blamed the unfolding disaster on the cowardice of their allies, the Carians and Ionians. Just at that moment, Xerxes saw an Ionian ship ram an Athenian trireme, before it was rammed in turn by an Aeginetan ship. Undaunted, the Ionian marines counterattacked, boarding and taking the Aeginetan ship. After observing this evidence of Ionian bravery, Xerxes ordered that the Phoenician captains be taken away and executed.
Oh, dang.
Wrecked ships.
Yeah, there definitely is that, like, yeah, Xerxes' presence definitely, I could see how it definitely inspires hope, right? Or at least, like, a morale boost, like, hey, our king's here, but also kind of fear among the captains, like, oh, I really don't want to mess up in front of this dude, you know? Yeah, that's also, like, a bit of both, you know?
Floundering men and corpses clogged the strait, as the battle turned decisively against the Persians. Aeschylus, the playwright, who almost certainly fought in the battle, compared the Greeks killing Persians to fishermen spearing tuna. As Persian ships tried to escape, they were hit in the flank by the Aeginetans, who distinguished themselves above all other Greeks that day.
The oldest trick in the book strikes again.
Queen Artemisia was among those trying to escape the slaughter, with an Athenian trireme in hot pursuit. Seeing her path blocked by a friendly ship, she gave the order to ram it. When the Athenian captain saw this, he thought he must be pursuing an allied ship, and went looking for other prey.
Oh, wow.
The remnants of the Persian fleet streamed back to Phaleron.
Yeah, this queen seems like a really interesting character that I did not know existed until this video. So that's really interesting.
In a final ruthless act of the battle, Aristides landed with a force of hoplites on Citalia and massacred the 400 Persians who'd been abandoned there. In total, the Persians lost around 200 ships and 12,000 men, including the fleet commander Ariabignes,
Dang.
a half-brother of the great king himself. The Greeks lost just 40 ships. It proved to be one of the...
Holy crap. Oh, that is a disaster. Wow. Oh my goodness. Dude, Persia got clapped hard.
greatest naval victories in history.
Certainly.
Our land bewails the men she bore, slaughtered for Xerxes, who has fed hell's hungry jaws with Persian dead. The Greeks had inflicted a humiliating defeat on Xerxes and ended all hopes of an easy conquest. Now the king heeded Queen Artemisia's advice and ordered his general Mardonius to continue the campaign in spring, while he returned to Asia with the bulk of his army. If Mardonius was victorious, Artemisia had told him, the glory would belong to Xerxes. If Mardonius was defeated, the blame belonged to Mardonius. But there was no victory for Mardonius. The next summer, he faced the combined Greek army at Plataea. In a crushing Persian defeat, Mardonius was killed, along with much of his army. On the very same day, according to Herodotus, the Greek fleet inflicted another heavy defeat on the Persians at Mycale. The threat of Persian invasion was over. In the years that followed, the Greek counterattack would begin, led by a new Greek alliance, the Delian League. Salamis has been credited with more significance than almost any other battle in history. The victory that saved Greece from slavery and paved the way for its classical age. This was the period in which the arts, democracy, science, and philosophy flourished in the Greek world. Thus, Salamis has been hailed as the battle that saved the cradle of Western civilization.
That is so cool. Could you imagine what would have happened if they lost? Like, how the world would have been changed if, like, Greece had become a Persian, like, vassal? Wow. That's really cool. I'm glad to have seen this video, because this rocked.
It's a dramatic argument that can be overstated. Greek defeat would not necessarily have led to the extinction of Greek culture. And though 5th century Athens was a revolutionary, pioneering experiment in democracy, it's not the sole blueprint on which modern democracy is based. Nevertheless, Salamis remains a decisive battle and a turning point of history. And thanks to Herodotus, it survives as one of history's oldest examples of a heroic struggle against the odds and struggle for freedom.
Yeah, Herodotus, man. You gotta love historians, because they're unsung heroes to preserving stuff like this so we can learn from them. Again, nothing but praise to real historians, you know? Like, it's so great to be just, like, we could just learn from this and just go on YouTube and just see all this. Again, that's great.
We have many people to thank.
So that's the end of the video, and I just want to say that I really enjoyed it. Again, like I was aware of like Marathon and Thermopylae, as like usually, especially Thermopylae gets a lot of coverage, you know, and talked about the most, I think. But this is definitely up there, and maybe at points exceeds the other two in terms of like impact in the future. So I'm glad to have finally seen an in-depth look of what could have happened, or as close to what happened as possible, according to the sources that we have at our disposal. And once again, the Greeks, they were the underdogs through and through, and just seeing them overcome the Persians, which on paper seemed like they should have won, is great. Again, the Greeks, when they got together and could unite, they could do great things, you know? So, once again, another great video by the amazing Epic History on the video right here, and I'll see you guys tomorrow when we do something else. Bye, everyone.